Hey there, you're listening to Your Life is Awesome, featuring true life stories about sex told by audience members at Smut Slams around the world. Smut Slam is a growing network of dirty storytelling shows founded in 2011 by me, Cameron Moore. We do our best to keep Smut Slam safe, but safe doesn't mean G-rated. Some of these stories are explicit as fuck. If you're not into that, now is a good time to get out. Otherwise, enjoy the show. Hey there, and welcome to Your Life is Awesome. My name is Cameron Moore. My pronouns are she, her, and I am your host. I'm especially excited about today's episode. It's a Women's Day episode that is happening. And the good people of Alex TV, who feature this show on their website, alex-berlin.de, asked us if we wanted to do something special for Women's Day. And we were like, that is a great idea. So yeah, I want to just say that it makes a lot of sense for Smut Slam as an event celebrating sexual openness and kind of transformative, liberating experiences. It makes sense for us to be doing this on Women's Day because, frankly, women have been on the forefront of a lot of the major moves and workshops and rallies and protests and movements around how to be more authentically ourselves sexually and from a gender point of view. Absolutely. We're talking being on the forefront of sex workshops and exploring our bodies to leading some of the major protests and rallies and around sexuality and gender. So yeah, like we're definitely good people to listen to for this. And this episode is a collection of women storytellers from our first 10 episodes. So it's worth listening in. If you've been with us from day one, you'll get to enjoy some of the early stories a second time. If you're new to the Smut Slam concept, if you're new to Your Life is Awesome, well, this is a great way to get into our show. There are no fuck buckets in this one, no questions or confessions from the audience. It's just all narrative goodness, all right? So, happy Women's Day. Strap in, and we'll see you on the other side.
Yeah, so I was a performer for a lot of years. I don't really get stage fright. I don't get nervous about dates normally. And then COVID came. And thank you, yes. And then I gained 50 pounds. And then I ended up in a wheelchair. And now people are doing stuff again. And I had kind of consigned myself to a life of celibacy and loneliness for the most part. And then I don't even know what came over me. But a few weeks ago, I was like, fuck this, I'm gonna go for it.
Your life is awesome.
Thank you. The story, okay. So I really, really hate the idea of having to wade through people who are just not into my body. So I made a profile on this fat-friendly website, and I started talking to this guy. He's a little younger. He's really good-looking, and, super, complimentary. And we're about to, we've made plans to meet, and I am super nervous. It's my first time going out in a wheelchair. It's my first, and I have to say, I have never been that nervous for a date in my life. And I met up with him at this, I live in Lichtenberg, right? And there's not a lot of great ambiance places in Lichtenberg. So we went to this really crappy bar, but it was wheelchair accessible and, I could get there and it was within walking distance of my place and whatever. And the plan was, I was more like, I need sex. I would really like for someone, yeah, I'm like, rail me like there's no tomorrow. I was really out there with that. I had it on my profile, so he knew what he was getting into, you know. And still, we talked for a couple of hours, and he said a few things that were like, if I was looking for a relationship, they would have been red flags, you know. Like, obviously, I was on a, fat website, so he's like, oh, before we met, what's bigger, your belly or your ass? I'm like, I don't know, what's bigger, your dick or your brain? You know? But he laughed, thank you. But he laughed, so I was like, okay, you don't take yourself that seriously. All right, maybe we'll get along. And it turns out, he was kind of like immature for his age even, and quite privileged, and didn't understand anything about queerness or transness or any of that stuff. And he was a physicist, and he kind of complained when he asked me if I was queer, and I said yes, and he said, but you seem like totally a woman to me. And I was like, okay, wait, let me explain. Okay, let me tell you, this is how it is, we're not born knowing this, so, and I'm fine answering questions of the ignorant. But then he said, oh, this is so complicated. And I said, oh yeah, like string theory is super easy. Okay, but there was still the railing to be had, and I was like, okay, all right, I don't have to be in love. And it was so disappointing. It was 2 minutes. It was 2 minutes. And he wasn't interested in doing anything else after that. And so I was just like, okay, bye-bye, never to be seen. But you know what? I will never be that nervous again. I'm like, nobody has that power over me now. I have been out. I have seen that even when it's, I'm feeling almost desperate. I'm like, no, you know what? You never need to be desperate. Just go for what you want. If it's not great, there's another day. So.
How many of you know what a promise ring is? Oh my God, yes, okay. So I'm an American, and we have this I grew up in Bible Belt, Michigan. Yes, yeah, I know. As a teenager, I chose heterosexuality with a promise ring, and I did that whole thing, and it was not good for me. And I ended up married, and, all the things. But along the way, there were many points of context where it was like, it was clear that, that's not what you want. And one of them was this woman that I went to college with. And we were in the same music program. We sang jazz together. She was an alto, I was a soprano. And me and actually the future husband, and then now ex-husband, you can say boo to that. Thank you. We used to call her Homewrecker. And she loved this name, by the way, because she was slutty and loved to flirt and have sex with everyone. And I was just like, oh my God, I was so enraptured with her. And there was one point where future husband/ex-husband was living in, thank you, was living in this house. And it was in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And this house was not very well insulated. And future husband/ex-husband was living in, or had a bed that was basically a single bed. It was really not enough for two people. So there was one night it was extremely cold because it was Michigan. It was like negative 20 degrees or whatever it was. And so the decision was made that I would go and sleep downstairs with, I need a name. That's Angela. Yes, Angela. So I went downstairs to sleep in Angela's bed because Angela's bed was bigger and it was warmer. Yeah, all of those things. In the middle of the night, someone's hand starts creeping over towards my body. Someone's body starts cozying up to me. And I realize that I'm enjoying this far more than I thought I should. And basically, at the time, I didn't know that this was what was going on, but I basically, like, without much touch, had an orgasm next to her. With, like, literally, it was just hands, not even here. It was, like, here. And I didn't realize that was what was happening at the time, and I was like, oh, that was really nice, but I shouldn't ever do that again. And because I made a promise with my promise ring. So I ended up, marrying the husband, now probably ex-husband. And boo, thank you. And 13 years later, I meet up with Angela. First, we have like a Facebook exchange, like, oh my God, do you remember college? That was really fun. She lives in America and I live here. And so it was one of these occasions like, oh yeah, we're going to catch up. It's going to be, so much fun. We had so much fun in college singing jazz together. And I met up with her in, it was Grand Rapids. It wasn't Kalamazoo. And things developed. Yeah. Yes, they did. And Angela and I, the first time we met again, it was basically an all-night makeout session. So, and then the second time, this was really the first time that I had ever really had sex with a woman. And I made her comment. I was like, what am I? Magic fingers? What am I? I was like, what is this? And I think, unfortunately, went to my head because I was like, oh, my God, I'm so good at this. So the next couple of times, it wasn't quite as successful. I had to, work a little harder. But I will say Angela was the most magic person in my life. She brought me to who I am. She brought me to my first experience as a bisexual woman. And thank you, Angela, for that.
In 2001, some of you might not have been born yet. In 2001, I went to Burning Man for the second time. Round of applause, people who know what Burning Man is. Yeah. Puzzled looks from people who don't know what Burning Man is. Yeah, there's a few of you. Okay. So Burning Man, for those of you who don't know, is a festival of drugs, sex, rock and roll, art happening in a desert in Nevada. It is a lot of sex, to be honest, for a lot of people. And I went there that year specifically with the purpose of getting laid. Let me tell the backstory on that. So the year before, I had talked to my long-term girlfriend and said, I want an open relationship because I think I still want dick. That went down like a ton of bricks. It was a hard conversation. It was a series of hard conversations. And the end result of it is like, okay, we will try open relationships, but no fucking in her car, no fucking at home, no fucking anywhere in the general kind of 50-mile radius. And so, those all were at the time, they felt like quite reasonable kind of considerations because we were both feeling very tentative about it. And we finally decided that, okay, Burning Man, that's an 8-hour drive away. Surely that's safe enough. People come there from all over the country and the world. I'll do that. I will go get some more dick at Burning Man. Yeah. And it was compounded by the issue that I also was determined to go to Burning Man to get dick, to get laid, while sober. And I feel weird telling this story in bars where it's like, go ahead and drink, it'll loosen your inhibitions. But my problem had been for a decade that I would get really fucking wasted and then have ill-advised sex with dudes. And when I say ill-advised, I mean everything from deep regret the next day to possibly criminal, right? On their side, right? So I was, at that point, I had just like, when I got together with my girlfriend, I had thrown away all of that. I was just like, I am so tired of weird sex with dudes. Thank God I'm bisexual. Okay, I'll just go for that and skip all the problems. But of course, bisexuality, if you've got it, if you are it, just like any other sexuality, you can't actually repress it. Like whatever your kind of ratio is inside, like how much do I like this and this and this gender, it's kind of there. You can't unknow what you know. And what I knew after a drunken one-night stand, cheating on my girlfriend, is like, oh, I still do want dick. Let me just remove the booze and the drugs out of the equation and see if I really want it or if it's just the drugs doing all the work. So I went, this seems like heroic when I think about it now, because Burning Man really is about sex and drugs. There's a lot of drugs going on there, which is terrible because it's a desert. So who's keeping track of how well you're hydrating? Nobody, right? Nature will kill you. They don't care about your high. So I went and I was sober, and actually it was almost like a trek, a biblical trek in the desert. It was almost like that. Because I was hydrating enough, but it was very dry during the day and hot and very cold at night. And I would just kind of stride around with a cape, you know. It's just a good all-weather sort of like majestic biblical attire, you know. And I would look at things and be sober, and I would serve coffee to people at the central tent and be sober. And I just got to see everything sober. And it was a very strange, transcendent experience. But I wasn't getting laid. Was not getting laid yet. And so I tried to be very chill. I tried to be very kind of like, you know, grounding in myself. It's fine. It's a journey. It's part of the process. It's all fine. But really, I wanted to get laid. Okay. So I was just nurturing this little bit of sadness in the back of my heart, the back of my head. And on the very last night, like the night of the burn, they call it the burn, when they take the big 40-foot tall wooden man and set that thing on fire. I was like, okay, I've reached the end of the burn. I've reached the end of Burning Man just about. I guess I'm not getting laid, which I felt extra sad about because I dressed up specifically that night. So nice. It was like this black velvet mini dress, you know. It was like ruffle butt panties, you know, those ruffly panties, right? Yeah, and fishnets and Doc Martens. And I didn't know how to dress to attract men in any way. What I thought I needed to dress like. I did not know how to do that because I had just spent 10 years as a dyke. And so I still don't know how to do it. But like, I asked friends to help with my attire, and they said, this is a cute outfit. I said, great, I'm going to put on this cute outfit, and I'm going to be there at the burn, sitting on the couch, watching the wooden man get prepared. Don't turn the lights down, thanks. Watching the wooden man get prepared to go on fire and thinking, this is the end. Okay. But at least I look nice. And then this guy sat next to me, as if I had summoned him out of nowhere. This guy sat next to me and said, you look nice. Almost exactly what I was thinking in my head. At least I look nice. You do look nice, right? And he said something about like, oh, that's a great outfit. He said, I really like the way that velvet looks. And he kind of touched my thigh where the velvet was. Like, oh, okay. And then he said, I saw your ruffle butts earlier. I saw your panties earlier. Those are cute. And I was just sitting there going, melting. The long story short, which it never is, but like we ended up flirting, and I was sober. I was just like doing this, and I'm like, oh, I can do this. I don't need that. I can do this by myself. And I still want it by myself. And so we ended up going back to his tent, which wasn't like a pup tent. It was a full out dome tent. So when I got on top, I could sit upright, right? And I totally did, because it was fucking, yeah, he was pretty big. And so when I sat on top, it was a little bit like, oh, I see. It felt like it was going right up into my throat kind of thing. And I was just rocking back and forth and just fucking majestically riding that right up into the fucking ceiling, through the tent, out into the night sky. Everyone in the camp around us, probably for a 50-mile radius, heard me going, yes! You know, like I really just fucking have a great time on that. And like the next morning, where there were no promises exchanged, I didn't see him again. I didn't talk to him again. But like that will always be one of the more formative sexual encounters of my adult life, not because of his dick. It was pretty good. But because I was there for it entirely, and I could experience that magic without anything else, that I could make that magic happen and create that magic with someone else just with what I brought from myself. Thank you.
I was 14 and I had made the executive decision that I needed to be someone who loses her virginity early. This has been an executive decision I had made because I realized sex must be fun. My idea of sex, unfortunately, was penis in vagina, fast, done. And I decided to fulfill my duty to myself to have sex early by seeking it out, which in my unfortunately very self-conscious body meant this would be a very hard task. And I said to myself, you will take every opportunity to potentially get there. This was a goal, by the way, just set to myself, by myself, for no apparent reason. But I decided that I must have sex before I'm 16, or else I have failed myself. I don't know why, but I decided that that was it. And so we start on my long and arduous journey to fulfill this task, which should have been pretty easy when you're around a bunch of horny 15-year-olds. And we start with our first character, Silvio. Silvio was this beautiful Italian man I met on an island. He was 17, I was 15, and I said, this is it. Silvio and I, we will consummate this, and I can finally win my own bet. It is late night. We are on a beach. It is sandy. All the friends have left. We take out a beach chair. We lie on it. We make out. I look up at the sky. I feel the sand in my toes, and I'm like, yes, Matilda, you are about to fuck. And then Silvio asks me, have you done it before? And I go, is this a good moment for a lie or a bad moment for a lie? And I decide to tell him the truth, which fortunately, made him say, I'm so sorry. This shouldn't be the way you lose your virginity. But I was like, no, you must understand. I have to fulfill a duty. And that goes Silvio. And a month later, I am in America for the first time at theater summer camp. And there is Casey. In comes Casey. Casey was in the film summer camp. Ooh, already hot. Casey had floopy hair. This is 2006. Hot. Casey had red cheeks and was from Wyoming. I'd never heard of Wyoming. Hot. The boys and the girls were not allowed to see each other after 10 p.m., which for my little slutty Italian self was pretty hard to understand, considering I spent my weekends drinking Bacardi breezers and making out with strangers. And so there was the boys had decided to throw a toga party, and I was like, hot, Matilda, Silvio didn't fuck you, but tonight you will fuck. And so I make this decision. I take my sheet and I secretly stumble across the hallways of the UCLA theater camp building to get myself to Casey's room, in which there is myself and Casey, not a party. And I, unfortunately, hadn't been informed of the fact that in order for you to have enjoyable penetrative sex, things must happen beforehand. My understanding was, bam, bam, that's it. And so we get to the point in which bam, bam could happen. And I'm like, yes. And I'm wearing a jean skirt with too many buttons. And I will never forget this boy, trying to unbutton my skirt and going, oh, fashion. At which point I knew it wasn't going to happen. And there ended trial number 2. Enter Marco. Marco falls madly in love with me, because why not? And we are 15. And I think to myself, the man is in love with you. You will now finally fuck. You are not 16 yet. You have fulfilled your expectations. And but neither Marco nor I had sex before, and so we try and fail over and over and over and over again. And this process became so lengthy that at one point I stopped believing in it, until one day, it is the afternoon after school. We are in my father's bed and we are naked going at it. We are both like, today it's going to work. Yes, it will work, when in waltzes my father. So one more attempt done, and I think the trauma from this held Marco back from wanting to sleep with me for about another 6 months. So I am at this point approaching 16. You must understand that my anxiety is at an all-time high. If I do not fuck within the next few weeks, I have failed myself. And so we finally go for it, and I am wearing the ugliest shorts known to mankind. Okay, I will never forget how ugly these shorts were. They were like this length, cut off from jeans, very unattractive. I was wearing terrible cotton underpants that had, when the acid from had like a little hole. And my parents are gone, and we're at the living room in my apartment, and we're like, gonna do it, it's gonna happen, and it does. And it was really just okay, of course. But then I had this moment in the shower, sitting by myself on the ground of my shower, and I was so happy. And to me, the magical moment was actually by myself in the shower, realizing I fulfilled my expectations. Thank you.
So, first of all, I want to say there's no villains in this story. So there might be some conservative parents, but they're not villains. So, I've been masturbating for as long as I can remember. Literally, I don't know when that started. Thinking about the things that I used and when they were available to me, it would have to be at least 23 years, at least. So, in my first childhood home, we didn't have a pool, but then we installed a pool, and my brother and I were very excited for all the fun times we would have in the pool. But actually, there were a lot more fun times than I was really expecting. So when we installed this pool, somehow I discovered that the little jet thing on the side feels really nice when you put your body against it. And I did that like every time we went in the pool. And as a child, like, we lived in that house until I was about 6, so I would always have been supervised in that pool. So there was always an adult around, and probably other kids as well. But yeah, whenever I could, I would press myself against the thing, and it felt nicer and nicer and nicer and nicer, and then it stopped feeling nice, and I would swim away, and then I'd come back and do it all again. And then we moved house, and our next house didn't have a pool for about 2 years. I know. Sad 2 years. And then we built another pool in the new house. Yeah. And it actually had 2 jet thingies.
Oh, your life is awesome!
Yeah, it was a large pool. And I had to learn like which angles were better for each jet. Luckily they both had like a step under where the jet thing was. So luckily, because the deep end I wouldn't have been able to sand. And I often had these grazes on the sides of my knees because the pool was made of like, what do you call it? Gyprock? Is it gyprock? Like that pebbly kind of... No, that's not gyprock. Anyway, it had like a pebbly kind of surface. So if my knees were rubbing against the edge, like they would graze. So I often had these grazes on the inside of my knees. And then at some point, my dad said to me, he obviously saw me doing it one day and said to me, Mad, don't do that. Like, come away, come away. And I was like, why? It feels nice. And he was like, you just shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. And I obviously realized that there was something taboo about it, because I said to him, like, it just tickles my tummy a little bit. Like, I didn't say it tickles down here a little bit. So I knew that something was not quite right. So I learnt not to do it when Dad was watching. Or when anyone else was watching. And, so when I was in high school, I guess, then we didn't, like, my brother and I were home alone after school. And I knew that there were certain times where I could go in the pool and press myself against the jet. And the jet was also set to a timer, so it was like, okay, between 4 p.m. and 4:30, I could go in, have my good times, and then Dad would come home at 5 or whatever it was, and I'd have to get out. Yeah, and of course, like, once I became familiar with the jet thing that felt really good, I would take any opportunity I could to enjoy myself with other jets in life. So, like, any kind of, like, public pool or spa where I could kind of get away with doing it subtly, I would try and do that. Also in showers and bathtubs, depending on the shape and form. We also had a bath that was like the perfect sort of shape at some point, and then we renovated and changed the bath, and I was like, Mom, Dad, like, you should have consulted me before you chose the bathtub. So it seems to work really well when the tap for the bath is like in the middle, because I can put myself like this, and just like tilt the right angle, and there's lots of options to change the pressure and the temperature, and yeah, I just got so good at it. My record time was about 11 seconds. You wouldn't believe it. Yeah. So when I really wanted to get the job done quick, I could do it, or drag it out. Removable shower heads, also really good. You can get really flexible. Sometimes the shower head, like, it might be flexible, but the pressure's not so good, so sometimes you can just like cover half of the little holes and like adjust the pressure. Yeah, there's a lot to it, and I've really worked it out. Anyway, so then I grew up, I moved out. Before I moved out, actually, I remember once my mum actually came into the bathroom while I was in the bath, and I like dropped quickly and just like looked like I was relaxing. And to this day, I'm not really sure if she's got what I was doing, but definitely Mum and Dad were probably both aware. Anyway, then I was going to move out, and I moved into a shared house, and the shower wasn't so great, didn't have a pool, but luckily they had a bath. But the thing was, the bath had the tap in the wrong position. It was at the end of the bath, so to really get under it and get close, like, I had to be like really, like, with my legs like up against the wall, trying to hold myself in the right position. And I was so determined to make it work, because I thought, if it's not going to work in this bath and the shower and there's no pool, like, what am I going to do? Anyway, so one day I was trying, and like, all my muscles were aching. I was getting really close, but I couldn't get there. I slipped, and I like slid back, hit my head in the bottom of the bath. And for a split second, I thought, like, oh my God, what if my skull is cracked and there's blood everywhere, and they have to call my parents and say, your daughter's had an accident in a bath. What are my parents going to think? Luckily, there was no blood. But I did have a big bruise on my knee, because I kind of whacked my knee on the way down on the tap. And next time I went home to visit my parents, my mum noticed this big bruise on my knee. And she said, what happened? And I said, well, I was trying to reach something, and I just couldn't quite get there. And I slipped, and I just couldn't reach it. And she sort of looked at me, and I think there was just something on her face and on my face. I guess she just knew not to ask any more questions.
First girlfriend and the love of my life when I was 16. Yeah. And we were in school together, and we played in orchestra together, and we laughed our asses off. And she was, to me, as an out person, obviously fucking gay, but it took a little while to get her there. But I got her there. And we dated for a couple of years, and then I went to uni and she went to uni, and we split up, and then afterwards we came back together when we both moved back to London, and then we were together for a long time. Like, when you're 20, it was a long time. So we were together for like 7 years, and it wasn't the best relationship. It was a little bit dysfunctional. It was a little bit codependent. It was a little bit of that sort of early years queer girls vibe, which I'm sure some of you guys know. And we loved each other so hard and so deep and so possessively. And I am not a monogamous soul. And she really was. And we found our way through, like, by the skin of our fucking teeth. White nails all the way. And then I came to Amsterdam, first of all, started studying in Europe. I got a studio place, and it started to come apart because I wanted to grow. So anyway, it started to come apart. and it started coming apart, and we didn't want it to, and it just got darker and darker and darker, and it needed to fucking stop. This might not be a headlining kind of story. Yeah, so we'd done long distance, and we had made each other's hearts fucking break, and we decided we were going to go on a road trip across America in a car together, because we were really not functional for a relationship. We thought that was a good idea, and we did that, and we tried, and it was long, and it was fighty, and it was passive-aggressive, and then we got to the West Coast, and we came up the West Coast, and it was fucking beautiful, just beautiful all the way, and not beautiful at all inside. And we wanted to love each other, and we couldn't, and we hated each other so fucking hard, and we didn't have the right words, and we didn't have anything, and we were not fucking anymore, and that was our only way to get through things previously, was just the sex, and that had just dwindled to nothing because we were so far out of this. And then we got to a venue on the coast that one of her friends had actually booked, and they were going to come and join us. It was in Big Sur, so Americans, you know how fucking beautiful that is. And we had the night to ourselves, the first night to ourselves. And we got there, and we hadn't talked for like 5 hours. And she'd previously thrown her engagement ring down the drain a couple of days ago before. Yeah, it was good stuff. And we got there, and we drove up the side of this hill, and it was fucking treacherous, and death drops on both sides, and it was dark. And we got to this cabin, I guess Americans would say, and it had this deck outside and this view out to the sea. And we went in, and it was beautiful, and we couldn't talk, and we couldn't connect, and there was a bathtub on the terrace. And she ran herself a bath. And I went inside. And I watched her undressing and getting in the bath. And I was just standing there looking at the ocean and crying and not knowing how to finish this, but not knowing how not to finish it. And I poured us a glass of red wine each, and took them out and sat by her as she was taking a bath. And then she put her hand out onto my knee, and we held hands, and we couldn't talk anymore. We just couldn't talk to each other anymore. So I leant down and I kissed her. And all that hunger and need from the bottom of my soul, of her soul, just came out in that kiss. And then I got in the bath with her. And we fucked like we have never fucked before. And we said nothing. And then we unplugged the bath and let the water drain out and just looked at the sunset. And that was the end of it.
So I came here in a bad mood, actually. And your first story just gave me, gave me the one. And I was like, yeah, I can make something up. I can not make something. It happened. But I basically combined 3 tiny anecdote stories that happened. And I call it the evolution of shame. So like prior to COVID, I didn't really have sex toys. Besides a good relationship with electric toothbrush in my teens. Not really. And a friend bought me a dildo once, like 15 years ago, and I never actually used it, and the plastic just like sort of dissolved. But I was left with like the metal thingy, yeah? And I was like keeping it because it's sentimental, you know, like a friend bought it, and I was like, I'm not gonna throw it away, right? And it's powered by like these 2 like 9-volt batteries and like the whole thing. And so we were moving to another house, me and my husband, and his parents were helping us pack. And so
and I didn't want them to find it. I mean, they're like 75. They don't know what that is. But still, like, I don't want to have that conversation or these stares. There's not going to be a conversation. There's just going to be silence and stares. So I put it in my work bag, in my laptop bag. And I forgot about it. And then I needed to do a lecture at this facility in Israel that's like super like high secure. I'm a microbiologist, and I was just given a lecture, and it turns out that I have to be searched, like really, really searched. And like on a level of like I cannot have a USB. And so this like 19-year-old girl is like searching through my stuff and basically pulls out this metal thingy and stares at me, and I am mortified. I am so mortified, and then I just burst out like laughing, and she just puts it back in. And like I could have like 20 USBs in there. It's not really good security. So anyway, that was the first story, and like I was so ashamed of it. But like like after the COVID and like buying toys on AliExpress like everywhere, just like being like, yeah, and this one, and this one, and this one. I have a bunch now. So like when I traveled to Israel a few months ago to go to court, I was suing somebody. I wasn't the one being sued, which was nice. So I came to Israel for 3 days with a small trolley. You know where this is going. And of course, I have my like sucker in there. It's a good one. It's like a satisfier. And yeah. And turns out there's more security, and I completely forget about it, of course, and I put it through the machine at the courthouse, yeah. And this security guy, he's like, "Do you have anything for self-defense there?" And I'm like, "No," and I'm no, and he's like winking like at the other security guard, and he's like, shit, that's my vibrator. I came from Berlin," and he was like. And he was not expecting that. And I was like owning it. I was like, yeah, fuck it, it's this. My vibrator is fine. I have evolved, yeah? And I just just winked at him and went into court. And now I'm telling this story to my, I was sitting, I only came for 3 days, and I had like this evening with my aunt, my mom, and my grandma. And we're just, just going through our wine, just 3 bottles of wine, 4 people, just like chilling. And I tell them that story of how a security guard found a vibrator, and like we were like laughing and everything. And they start my aunt starts to ask me about vibrators and stuff, and I explain to her, and it's like hilarious. And then my mom goes like, "Yeah, that's interesting. Do you have a link?" And I go, "Sure." I'm like, "No, fuck it. I'm gonna order. I'm just gonna order to your house. It's fine." And then my grandma sits there really silent, and then she goes, "And what am I, a plant?"
So I was very young when I discovered that if I laid down on my stomach and I put one hand here and one hand here, and I kind of moved, that something very magical would happen. And I was actually so young that I really didn't know what it was. I didn't know that it was connected to human sexuality. I didn't know that it could possibly be connected to shame. I didn't know that maybe it was supposed to be private. I just knew that this thing happened with my body. I also knew that I really, really liked Disney movies. I liked The Little Mermaid so much that I did try to brush my hair with a fork, which made my mom very angry, because when she tried to brush my hair, I screamed. But I think that my favorite movie at the time was Aladdin. And I don't know, it's kind of that sort of age-old question of who did I want to be and who did I want to have sex with? And I don't know if I wanted to be Jasmine and have sex with Aladdin, or if I wanted to have sex with Jasmine or be the tiger, or I didn't know. I think I wanted all of it. I even had I wouldn't have called it this at that age, but I can call it this now. I had this sort of like masturbation fantasy where I was like laying in this dark, gloomy forest and this like tiger would appear and would kind of start like licking me and like biting at me. And it was very sexy and intense, but it was a tiger. So I hope that was consensual. I don't know. It was in my dream, but I didn't ask the tiger. So anyway. The place that I watched the Disney movies in my parents' house or in my like childhood home was in sort of like a den area. I don't know. This is very much a concept in like suburban America. So there was like, you know, the TV and some couches and like a big long coffee table. And I figured out that if I could lay under the coffee table in a way that most people couldn't see me, but I could still, if I turned my neck like all the way like this, I could still see the TV. And in that way, I could do my thing while watching the Disney movie, but while at least I thought not being discovered. So at one point, I do have a little brother. He's 2 years younger than me. Who's also fairly young at the time. And at one point, I think we're watching Aladdin for the 500 millionth time. And I'm like, I was laying on the ground and then I start like scooting myself slowly under the coffee table until I'm like mostly under it. And then I'm like, this is great. Now I'm in my little safe space. No one can see me. No one knows what's going on. And I was going for it. And I think my brother was like, what is she doing under there? And my mom was also present somehow. She had appeared out of somewhere, like the genie. She would just appear when you wanted her the most or the least. And my mom just goes, oh, she's just doing her pelvic exercises. Marie, if you're going to do that, you need to go. Marie, do that in your room. Okay, now while we're watching TV. And I would stop. And then I would think that like everyone had forgotten. So I would start again. Marie. My mother has a very specific way of saying, Marie, okay. So that's my story about pelvic exercises. Thank you.
So my husband is famous for several things. One of them is composing contemporary music. He is considered one of the top 5 contemporary composers alive today. But Melina, what is contemporary music, contemporary classical music? It's weird shit that like no one listens to. So he's famous for, you know, being weird, writing weird shit that no one listens to. He's also famous for being my owner and husband. We are involved in a completely consensual, dominant and submissive dynamic. I am the submissive. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. It shouldn't be hard to believe because the reality is the toughest bitches on the planet are submissives. The fiercest, most get shit the fuck done bitches on the planet are the people who identify as consensual slaves and submissives. And so when my beloved owner/husband orders me to find someone for us to have a threesome, this is my responsibility. The problem is I'm 53 and my libido is doing that thing that it does when your hormones are like, fuck you. Don't fuck anybody. Fuck everybody in the next 10 minutes. Now don't want to fuck anybody for the next 10 months. So you who have uteruses, be warned. No one told me, and I was like, fuck. So the thing is that my husband, my owner, if it has a pulse and it consents, he is DTF. He is ready to go. I, on the other hand, could have like Idris himself in front of me, naked, rippling grease, and I'd be like, could you get me a snack? Because those are my priorities these days. So it's very difficult for us to find sex partners because he's ready for anybody. I'm like, I have 3 people on the planet who I might want to fuck, and 2 of them are busy. I do have one friend who's another famous sex weirdo. Have you heard of cuddle parties? This is the guy who like created these. His name is Reed. Very delightful. He's sort of, to understand him, you have to know he's basically like a horny golden retriever. He's sort of just like, you want to have sex? Oh my God, that's amazing. So pretty much he is the one person who I can call and be like, dude, are you ready for the 3 with the stuff and the yes? So we had this arrangement, and for the couple of months beforehand, because arranging all our schedules is almost impossible, I'm just not looking forward to it, and I can't understand why. This is like one of the few people I actually do want to fuck. And I'm having a threesome. We rented a whole house in like California up north with redwood trees and like no one around so we can scream and bang the walls down. And I'm just sort of like, and I can't figure out why. You know how you can sort of lie to yourself? As a submissive person, as someone who's dedicated to service, I just love doing things for people. I couldn't understand my greediness because what I really wanted, what I really fucking wanted, was to not have to do anything. I just wanted to lay back and be like, service my body, white men. As you do. But I was too terrified because I was like, I'm a service submissive. I serve, that's what I do. How can I be like, you do me? I don't want to do anything. I don't even want to suck your dick unless I want to suck your dick. You don't go waving it in my face expecting me to, you know how they just like start slapping it against your face and you're just like, could you like ask first with the thing with balls in my chin? Okay, so it's a week before the assignation and I finally, literally like in the middle of the night, woke up my owner and I said, sir, professor, look, here's the thing. I don't want to have to do anything in this threesome. I just want you to do me. And he's like, this is good. And I'm like, really? Okay. So I message Reed. I'm like, Reed, so this is a do me pillow queen threesome? And he's like, awesome. And I was like, oh my God, why did I fucking wait so fucking long? So we get to the beautiful cabin. We're hanging out. We're chatting. We had some friends over. They were not sure if they were going to stay for the sex party because when you hit middle age and you're a pervert and you've been fucking in sex parties for like decades now, you just opt out sometimes. You're like, oh, it's 11. I gotta, like, you laugh now, but you're gonna find me in 20 years and be like, oh shit, you were right. Who knew this was even a possibility? You do, yeah. As you have heard, you do not have to wait 20 years. You can be done fucking now. So the evening progresses, and what was hilarious is that my owner is out in the living room, like trying to sort of like lure one more person to the party. And she's like, I got work. I got a thing. And he's like, oh, but this, you don't have to stay the whole time. You can come and go in the thing. And I'm like, professor, just... Meanwhile, me and Reed are in the bed, like rubbing our booties together, like, yeah, let's do the thing. And I'm like, what if I, so I finally literally walk in and I'm like, sir, the sex is starting. My titties are out. And he's like, oh, here comes jogging in. Here's the thing. I had no idea how to just receive sex. I was like, since the age of had always been convinced that the way to have sex was for me to do and give everything as much as I possibly could. And there was such a stigma attached to being a quote-unquote pillow queen. Do you have that term? That I was ashamed and embarrassed and I felt really terrible. So I had to really force myself to not do anything. And I was like, okay, here I go. I'm just laying here, not like stiff like a board, like laying here, but they're like relaxed laying here, you know, thing. And so we start sort of fooling around. We're making out. There's some titties being rubbed. There's some fingers going into a vagina. There's someone trying to get a finger up my butt. I'm like, lube, 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 lube. I don't care how wet the front pussy is, the back pussy always needs lube. Do that shit. So at one point, my lovely, lovely husband, who has a thing for titties, like a thing. It's not even kind of a thing, it's a thing. It's such a thing that like on his birthday on Facebook, I post, okay, Spouse-Meister titty time, and just people just post their titties. And every year people are like, well, I'm like, what? Did I say they have to be gendered titties? It's titties. He loves them all. That's how much of a titty person he is. So he's sort of like up around my head and rubbing my boobs and playing with my face and telling me how beautiful I am and telling me how sensual I am. And meanwhile, my friend Reed is down there like between my legs, like with his tongue and his fingers and tongue. And something is going on. I'm just like, oh my God, I don't get, sex is sort of amazing. And I'm literally like, just take a breath. You don't have to do anything. I keep turning around like, do I need to suck a dick? Do I need to fondle nipples? Do I need to juggle someone's balls? No, I don't need to fucking do shit. And then the orgasms start. And here's the thing, I am not a difficult person to bring to orgasm. Let us just say that. I actually had a guy I fucked on a pickup on Craigslist complain about it. He was like, I felt like I could have just been rubbing you with sandpaper and reading from the New York Times and you still would have come. I'm like, yes, bitch, yes. How is this a problem? You're weak. So 8 or 10 orgasms in, I have my legs locked around Reed's head. I have my husband who is like sucking on my titties so hard. I'm just like coming just from that. And I had the first round of orgasms and I'm laying there like sweating, like, holy shit, oh my God, this was so good. And then it started again, and I'm like, oh my God, this is fucking fantastic, amazing. And I realized about an hour or so into this that they are having the best time. They are playing me like 3 accordions and loving it. Their lives are fucking awesome. Because I realized, and suddenly the light bulb finally went off. Service isn't just about doing for someone. Watching someone have pleasure that you are providing for them is also service. And after like hour 3 or so, trust me, there was some Gatorade fortification because a bitch was dehydrated. A lot was going on. But it was so liberating for me to feel like being a pillow queen was not just all right, that it was fucking magical and powerful. And I just felt so delighted at the end of that. Thank you. And then I go on Facebook the next day and I'm just like, everyone needs to know being greedy and selfish about sex is fucking rad. And my friends are like, where the fuck you been, bitch? Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening, and thanks again to all of our tellers whose stories were featured again in this roundup. If you love this show and you want more regular episodes, or you really like what we're doing, you want to see more special episodes, either way, give us a boost and jump on our Patreon. There is an archive of extended, longer episodes to enjoy with stories and fuck buckets that never made it onto the regular episodes. And you get to listen to the regular episodes early, all right? So go to patreon.com/yourlifeisawesome and join our little band of smut lovers from around the world. Oh yes, there's a lot of us, okay? And if you enjoy Smut Slam in the live format as well, like face-to-face, seeing it live, well, lucky for you, we got plenty of that action coming down the pike for you, okay? You can catch our show in Boston on March 4th. This is run by Victor Victrola, so have a good time there. That's a lovely, cozy event from all accounts. Also on March 4th, I will be hosting a slam in Luxembourg. On March 9th, I go to Odense in Denmark, March 9th, and Copenhagen on March 11th. Boom, next 2 days later, I'm in Barcelona on March 13th, and then back in Berlin on March 17th. On March 18th, Victor in Boston is running a second slam at a different location, Tiki Rock in Boston. So he's really excited about that. I'm looking forward to hearing how that goes down. So that's on March 18th in Boston. And then March 20th in Winnipeg, host Didi Brazier is bringing the smutty goodness back. That's what we've got for the next month or so. If you don't live in those locations, don't worry about it. Just tell your friends who do to go check us out. And in the meantime, of course, you can always find us here at Your Life is Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Stay smutty, my friends.
This has been Your Life is Awesome, a story podcast from Smutslam with Cameron Moore. Produced by me, Marc Seistedt. Music by Sticky Biscuits. A huge thank you to all storytellers featured. All stories are being shared with permission. If you want to help us make more of these, plus get access to longer episodes and other bonus material, please join our Patreon at patreon.com/yourlifeisawesome. If that's not in the cards right now, you can also help by rating and reviewing this show. Look for that option in your podcast app. We might read out some reviews on a future episode. Got a question for Cameron? Write or send a voice recording to smutslampodcast@gmail.com. This too might be featured on the podcast. And if you want to find out more about Smutslam and the code of conduct we use in the shows, go to smutslam.com. All links mentioned can be found in the podcast info. Thanks for listening.